So, Berto, I thought we would just do an episode in which we answer emails about movies, and also we could talk about the Oscars that happened recently. What do you say?
I love it. Let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kirk Hahn. I'm a therapist. I'm also a professor, and my favorite movie is A Clockwork Orange. Don't judge me. Berto, who are you?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I taste desalinated anchovies.
Anonymous listener, she says, "Hey guys, I have returned after not listening to the pod after 2 years. And I remember Humberto mentioning that he started getting into On Cinema at the cinema. I'm a big fan of On Cinema. I'm a big On Cinema head,
yes.
Like deadhead, and wondered where he's at on that journey. On that journey. Berto, where are you on the journey?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm actually...
Is this the Tim and Eric thing?
Well, it's one of them, right?
Eric.
It's
Tim Heidecker.
Tim Heidecker. Yeah. And Greg Turkington. I love it. It's so great. So basically, I've been rewatching it because I'm watching it with my older daughter, and we are currently, without spoiling anything, let's just say that we just finished the second season of the spin-off, which takes place on an island. If you watch the series, you should know what I'm talking about. And but I am further ahead. I've watched all the way to... I'm not finished, but I have watched all the way to definitely past the third season of that whole thing. I'm at the trial timeline. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And I absolutely love it. It is this show where I discovered it because I watched a YouTube video where someone was discussing it. This is a couple years, 3 years ago or something. They were discussing this, and it sounded so bizarre to me. And me loving movies, I'm like, oh, it's like a movie review show. So I started watching a couple episodes, and it's just the most ridiculous thing, right? Because
So to describe it, it's Tim and Eric, Tim Heidecker. He and his friend are... It's irony upon parody upon parody, and it's like it goes 360 back to being real, but then also another 360 into something else. And if you were to be a casual viewer, even if you knew that Tim Heidecker was a comedian, it would very much look like it is a serious show reviewing movies. But then sometimes I feel like what he's doing, not only with that, but also with the trial thing, that he's actually gone so far into parody and irony and jokiness that he's even playing a joke on people like you and me that know it's a joke. That he's like, I wonder what his mindset is if he's just like, I'm going to play this so straight that someone watching this might even think this is real, and the joke that I'm playing is no longer that it's a joke, but that it's actually real. But in the back of my head, I know that I'm joking all the way through. It gets so meta, and so that's what he's doing.
Yeah,
and at no point does he break.
No, never. It's so fantastic. That's what I love the best about his style of comedy, really. It's just that it's that kind of Andy Kaufman commitment to the bit. And Greg Turkington is great too, but Tim's like the instigator, and it's grand. So when I first started watching the first few episodes, I knew that it was a joke, but at the same time, it's impossible to not like feel like at first
how does your daughter appreciate it?
Oh, she loves it.
Well, why?
It's crazy.
How?
I think she has the kind of similar. Probably because she's watched a lot of things. I fed her, right? So she has a similar sense of humor, I guess.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah.
She's 12, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, she's 14 now.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, the years go by.
Jiminy Cricks.
Time goes by.
14.
But we started watching
How did that
it.
happen?
We started watching it like a year ago, so she was 13. Yeah.
But still,
that's
way advanced.
Yeah.
Most adults don't get the joke.
Right. And it could seem boring if you're not like...
Yeah.
If you're not getting the irony on the irony, it's going to be boring.
So that's my thing, is that the trial broke me. And I'm like, okay, but does it have to be so long and forever taking? I love Tim and Eric and the skits, and some of the skits could go on, but they'd be 15 minutes. Even their movies that they would do. Okay, we're talking 90 minutes, but to go on for several episodes, it's just like, well, at what point am I playing a joke on myself?
Well, he did a few years ago, he did the 12-hour spoof of Joe Rogan. Do you remember this?
No.
Here's what he did. He grabbed a couple of his buddies and they put on a 12-hour live stream that was meant to look like totally like the setup for Joe Rogan, and he was acting like Joe Rogan. And they did, it is a 12-hour joke. A 12-hour joke. And at no point in it, of course, do they break character and go, ha, can you imagine that this is for real? No. It's 12 hours of them. And then what they're doing is they're telling all those same ridiculous stories you might hear on a Joe Rogan. Like one of them's like, well, aliens or whatever. And he's like, wow, that's fast. 12 hours.
Well, that sounds funnier than the middle several hours of the trial.
Try to watch it for 12 hours and then let's talk. Anyways, my point is that it is on brand, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But we've even watched the Oscar specials, which are, like 2.5 hours long or whatever. And it's just so ridiculous, and it's hilarious. There's these running gags. Like he's every year he's like, all right, this year I'm not drinking. Last year got a little sloppy. And of course, by the halfway point, he's always drunk, and it's ruining the whole show. We love it. It's grand, and the Decker spinoff is just glorious.
All right, let's take a break. We get back. Let's talk about the Oscars. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. So we had our Oscars party and we watched the Oscars. What did you think about the winners and the losers?
First of all, I gotta say, once again, but you always throw grand parties. This one was so fun, and there wasn't anything significantly different. It's almost the same.
Well, I have a theory because I had a great time. Yeah. We had to cancel our Christmas party because so many people were sick and out of town. And so it's been a while since we've had a thing. Halloween would have been the last one. So that's part of it. But also, it was a good crew. It was a different mix than other times. And, if the original crew was there with this new crew, it would have been great too. Yeah. But it was felt good.
Something about it was extra special. I had a grand time. That said, I was pretty disappointed at some of the outcomes. But the other, I don't know, like.
Well, let's go line by line.
Yeah, okay, let's do it.
So, Best Picture, we had the 10 of Anora, who won, The Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. What did you think about Anora winning?
I was very happy that Anora won. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't my pick, although I did vote for it because I thought it was going to win. My pick would have been The Substance, but I really enjoyed Anora. I thought it was a great movie.
I loved Anora. Yeah. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Yeah. I also loved Dune Part 2. I liked it when we saw it in the theater. Right. I gave it an 8, which is pretty high for me, but upon rewatching it a couple more times, I gave it a 10. Wow, I mean, it's one, it's just a good movie. Two, it's Dune, which is hard to do, and particularly Part 2 because because Part 1 you can get away with a lot of concrete storytelling. With Part 2, if you understand the Dune story with the Quetzalcoatl Haderach and all that stuff, he managed to do something that for decades people thought was impossible. I mean, David Lynch even tried it. And
the second half of the David Lynch movie, which I love the movie, but second half, even the director's cut, it loses the plot. But the book loses. By the way, the book even does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a little worried about Part 3, honestly, because the story gets a little interesting.
I never read past the first book. So.
The best part of the Dune story is what was contained within Part 1. even when you get to part 2, it starts to get like, huh?
Yeah.
But he managed it really well, and the vibe of the religion and the planting of them, like there's so many
good.
things that he had to get across, and he had to show, don't tell.
And visually, it was a masterpiece.
Yeah, and the acting,
audio, everything.
And there isn't really a single moment where I'm rolling my eyes at anything, and that's hard to do because Dune is fucking weird.
Yeah.
The story's funny.
I agree with you, and I don't remember what I gave it when I watched it. I loved it, and I still think it's great.
Yeah, but Enora, I was on the edge of my seat. It was interesting, but the story and the characters and the client, the ending scene was so. I mean, it's like, how do you end a movie like that? And it was a story and an ending that I don't think I've ever seen in anything, any art. And yet it is something that I have seen over and over again. And it's universal that our issues come with us. And even in the face of someone being nice to us, or even in the face of vulnerability and that we're actually kind of winning or something, our issues will still bite us in the ass, And they didn't have a heavy hand. She didn't go on a long, description of what she went through prior to the movie. Like, we have no idea where she came from.
Yeah.
And the fact that the actress, who also won for Best Actress in the Leading Role, Mikey Madison, I would have put a lot of money that she had never acted in anything before because
it's possible.
She was so authentic to that part. When you see actresses who are playing a role like that, it always has a certain disconnect. I guess particularly if you know the actress, right?
Yeah.
But even that, because I was primed by Florida Project, which famously had the lead role a woman who had never acted before. So I just figured it was the same. But anyway, The Brutalist, I liked the first half. I really did. The second half, I was just like, okay, let's get on.
I've only seen the first half of The Brutalist because it's such a long movie. I will say that what I was seeing, it was interesting. It was slow, and sometimes there are long 3-hour movies that are slow that I don't notice the slowness. I was noticing the slowness in this one, and I would have probably cut. There's a couple things I would have cut out. I'm like, that's not necessary.
Yeah.
But visually, it was very interesting. The story they were telling seemed interesting.
Don't watch the second half with your kids.
No, I didn't watch the first half with my kids.
Okay.
No. No, are you kidding me? No. But the one I did watch with my younger kid, actually, was Bob Dylan, the
Complete Unknown.
Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
And I got to say, as a movie, it was definitely not my pick to win. I didn't think it was the best movie, but I loved it. Because I'm such a geek with the Bob Dylan thing. And so I loved all the scenes. He did a great job.
Yeah, people will dog on this movie because it has a common trope of biopic where you have kind of like, it's not like the full Wikipedia of this movie, right?
Yeah.
But it's a good, 5 years chunk of time or whatever. And I think that it's just like people making it a part of their personality to dog on movies like this because they realized that the tide was turning when that Queen movie came out,
Oh, sure.
And the thing is that there's a lot of reasons why you would have a movie like this. There's a lot of reasons why it would work on people. And it worked on me on a number of levels. One was the inside view. It's one depiction. It's not an actual documentary or anything, but it's an insider view to that life. And I've seen a lot of people saying that a lot of the elements were authentic, and it gives me a much clearer picture of early Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
I had some picture of it, but he was purposely a bit of an enigma.
I actually didn't. I had, even though I love him so much, love his music, I had a picture in my head of him on a train in the Midwest, just going from town to town with his little guitar. I never really pictured him in New York, like living in the middle of a big city, right?
Yeah.
And especially not at the key times of his musical career. I thought, well, yeah, maybe later when he got big and famous. So it was a complete unknown. And there were moments in that movie, like I didn't know this story, which apparently it's a famous story, of when they were recording like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
That the organ wasn't a planned thing, and that was a wonderful. I was like, oh my God, really?
He's not even an organist.
He's not. He was a guitarist. Showed up for the thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I didn't realize the panic when the Bay of Pigs thing, that everyone in New York was like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. Like, it makes sense, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't go into full detail, but it's it's not, that's not its intention. And there were so many different themes to the Bob Dylan and the American story that you would have to talk. Like, how do you depict the folk movement that he jumped in on,
Right, and it's hard to get across why were they so upset unless you have some more background on it.
Yeah. And how do you depict the changing times heading into the later 60s? How do you depict his relationships, and how do you depict going electric? And so it did a lot of things, I thought, and I thought did it well without being super heavy-handed.
I agree.
The other element to a story, besides just like an insider view, like giving us a picture of what it would be like, another layer that it really worked on me was just, even if it wasn't about a real person, is this an interesting story? Are there characters that I care about? Is there some tension there, or is there some kind of something I can identify with? It had all of that too. And another layer that it works, that you're hoping that a biopic works, is just visually, instead of just me telling you a story about Bob Dylan, does it need to be on the silver screen? And that also works.
Visually was grand, and audio, like the music was awesome.
Yeah.
I'd say the only reason I would ding it from it wasn't my best picture and stuff like that, I felt the second half of it, like I felt the narrative structure in the first half was stronger than the second half. The second half to me felt more vignette-y. And it's still I guess I was like a kid in a candy shop, loving every minute.
Vignette meaning, well, we got to do the organ scene,
right? So we're gonna show you this.
We got to go going electric.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's fine. But I was watching it with my wife, and she knows Bob Dylan, but she's not as invested. And I could tell that difference. Like I was just loving every second of it. But when I stepped back for a second, I'm like, yeah, I could see how as a story, the first half, actually, you felt like a little more of a direction. The second half, a little less. But I still loved it. I still thought it was a good movie.
Yeah.
And he was great in it. Fantastic.
Yeah. Best directing, Sean Baker for Anora. And he was up against The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Amelia Perez, and The Substance.
I don't mind that he won. I thought that was great directing.
Yeah.
It's just, the only part that's tough, and I always struggle with this, is you just gotta, it's almost like they should have two different categories. You imagine what it means to direct Dune 2.
Right. Yeah. Although, and the Anoras and the Moonlights typically win these kinds of categories, and for good reason. But you're right that one way to think of it is that Denis Villeneuve, he is lauded, and will be celebrated in a much bigger, more elaborate way than Sean Baker ever will be, because so many more people have seen Dune. It's much more generally culturally relevant. And so you could say that the best directing statuette goes to someone that they're not going to get all of the accolades and the benefits of their hard work that they deserve, Whereas Denis Villeneuve has been basking in Hollywood glory and budgeting and praise for a long time, for good reason.
No, I get it. You know what I would do if I were the Academy? Because they'll listen to me. I would add a category called something like technical direction or something like that. And it's basically...
Or epic director.
Yeah, whatever. And the point is listen, if you conducted 2,000 people for 3 years and across 7 continents...
And it's a good movie.
And it's a good movie.
And it works well, and it's acted well. Because, directing has a lot to do with the acting.
Then, yes, you get that award.
Yeah. Best actor, Adrian Brody. He was up against Timmy Chalamet and Coleman Domingo from Sing Sing, and Ray Fiennes from Conclave, and Sebastian Stan from The Apprentice.
Did you see The Apprentice?
No.
Sebastian Stan was amazing. Jeremy Strong was on a whole other level.
He plays Donald Trump.
And he really did a good job because it wasn't just an impression. It really felt authentic.
Yeah, he's the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and he's great. I will say I don't mind that Adrian Brody one. He was great. He's a great actor. He was doing great. What I minded was his damn speech.
So he got dragged a lot for that. Did you know that?
Did he? I didn't see, but
oh yeah. So he was having a moment.
Yeah.
And it's similar. It's not the same, obviously, but it's kind of like Will Smith, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like Adrian Brody and Will Smith went into that night as a shoo-in to win the Best Actor award, and it's a big build-up, and there's a lot of focus on him, and then they get so excited, or their head gets so big that they ruin it. So because a lot of people did not like this speech. Okay. Why didn't you like it?
Well, okay, first of all, I guess I didn't remember that he'd been out of the spotlight for a bit, and so maybe this was kind of like cathartic for him and stuff. But I felt two things that bothered me. First, the length. But the more important one is that in the middle of it, when they were trying to like pull him back, he's like, no, I've been there. I've been here before. Like, I know what's up, so no, I'm going to keep talking. And it just felt so entitled, so like I'm more important than everyone else, that it wasn't like he was doing it for a good cause. He wasn't speaking about the war in Ukraine or something, which I would understand better. Like Marlon Brando got a lot of heat for not accepting his award and letting a Native American speak. That I would accept. This was just like, hell, no, I'm having my moment. You guys have to sit there and take it. Didn't like it.
Yeah, he went on really long, and they didn't kick in the music.
They tried, remember? And then he goes,
little bit.
He goes, no, I've been here before. I know what's up.
Yeah, but normally they just
barrel through.
Yeah, and not only was that like, he wasn't like, I just have another couple sentences.
No.
That was like a quarter of the way in.
It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, so what happened online after was some famous people like, what's his name? Conan's sidekick.
Oh, yeah, Andy.
Richter.
Richter, yeah.
I think it was him anyway, that said, yeah, he went a little long here too, and then posted this video from SNL when he hosted SNL like 25 years ago or something. And he does this really cringy, potentially racist depiction of a Rastafarian.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds familiar, actually.
And then all this other stuff started coming up, like Tina Fey. Again, don't quote me on this. It might have been Amy Poehler, but I think it was Tina Fey was asked who was the worst host of SNL that you worked with, and I'm piecing this together from memory that she didn't answer directly, but somehow indicated that Adrian Brody might have been the most difficult. And, that's saying something when you're Tina Fey and she was a writer. So she had been on the show
and
for
you've had to deal with Steven Seagal and others like
right, just so many people. Yeah. And so then you think about, and apparently the story about the Rastafarian thing is that he really wanted to do this Rastafarian bit. And according to the story is that they were pushing back and saying, no, let's not do that. And then he kind of bulldozed it and sort of made it happen. Oh, wow. The other thing is when he does the Rastafarian racist depiction, essentially blackfacing, he wasn't in a skit. He was just supposed to introduce someone else, like I think the musical guest or something.
Oh, okay.
It was supposed to be for 5 seconds. Okay. You know when they do that on SNL when
yeah. And next up we got blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is the Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah. And he wanted to narcissistically capitalize on this.
Oh boy.
And insert his own pet skit character. Meanwhile, the writers and the directors of the show are like, no. And he just again bulldozed or even just did it anyway.
Live, yeah.
And apparently because it's live on the East Coast, they scrambled after it aired live and cut it down for it to be broadcast.
That's rude.
in the other, because they're just like, right, we need to get rid of this because when it's live, they can't what are they gonna do? Like tackle him, you know? And so now this is all just sort of secondhand news, but apparently, similar to Will Smith, he like had his moment. His head is giant, and apparently he has a problem with that. Apparently, he is identified as having issues of self-importance and whatnot, which is interesting because I wouldn't have thought that he was like that, you know? Yeah, I recently rewatched The Pianist and loved it even more, watching it more recently, actually. When I saw it when it came out, I was younger, and it was, you know, a good movie, and I liked it, but rewatching it, I'm just like, man, this is really, and, you know, The Pianist was made by, I think, Roman Polanski, by the way.
Oh, right.
Anyway, so, Best Actress, Mikey Madison, as we talked about.
Which I you know, I'm happy for her, but I was really sad that Demi Moore didn't win. I've never been a huge Demi Moore fan as an actress. I think she's fine, but I feel like this was like the role of her career.
Yeah. Best Actor in Supporting Role, Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain. Did you see that movie?
No, I didn't.
It's pretty good.
I was really sad that Jeremy Strong didn't win for two reasons. One, I loved him in Succession, and so I was sort of expecting that when I knew he was going to be Roy Cohn, I was expecting sort of a similar thing. He was unrecognizable. Like he was a completely different creature. It was so believable. And I've seen interviews with Roy Cohn and stuff, and it's like, dude, this guy nailed it. And even if I'd never seen a Roy Cohn thing, like he drew me in so much. I was like, this is amazing.
Well, watch A Real Pain because, and I haven't seen The Apprentice, but Kieran Culkin, at the very least, you have to admit when you watch this movie that Kieran Culkin he's doing a lot with that character.
I don't
doubt
it.
And he's inserting a lot. Like if anyone else had played that character, even if they were a good actor, it would have looked and felt a lot different.
Yeah.
And
I don't doubt it. I think and you know, I don't know if I'll feel this way. I've heard folks say that, well, he's kind of still playing the same character.
But, he is, but it's, there's a lot of decisions and a lot of, I'll tell you this. So the movie is about, it's sort of semi-autobiographical.
Jesse Eisenberg.
Right? And Kieran Culkin is his cousin who is a real pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. And the whole movie is just about the two of them essentially going on a road trip exploring their Jewish roots in Europe. And for the first half of the movie, I considered that character, Benji, to be a real pain. Mm-hmm. Like, it was written... Because, you know, what they'll do in Hollywood is they'll code someone as a real pain, but he won't be a real pain. You know, they'll pull back on the reins, or they'll give you some morsel of relatability early on so that you can like him. Because he's supposed to be kind of like the hero of and the Jesse Eisenberg character is kind of like an observer, you know? Right. And so... so I commend the writing and the directing and the acting, in that you could argue, you know, I could see people watching this movie and never liking the character, just like from the beginning until then, just like, I hate that fucking guy. And for me, the transition of this character study makes so much sense. And I, you know, toward the end, I'm like, I can see him, but I wouldn't want to hang out with him. Right. Like, I get it, but given my personality, I wouldn't want to hang out with someone like this, but I see his heart's in the right place, and I could see a lot of people really loving this guy. In fact, you might kind of not in the same way. Sure. But, you know, you can be a divisive person. You know, sometimes, especially when people first meet you, they don't like you. Not so much anymore, but, you know, 10, 20 years ago. And you have a heart. Your heart is in the right place, but you're spontaneous and confident and extroverted, and some people would react to you in a really, you know, adversarial, hating sort of manner, you know, and it's kind of like that, actually. Yeah. I'm not saying you're like Benji in this movie at all, but it is kind of in that category. It's interesting.
I definitely want to watch it. Yeah. It was, So, but I was sad Jeremy Strong didn't win because but fair enough.
And then Zoe Saldana won.
Now, That one I'm pissed about.
So I've heard from critics who say that Amelia Perez was a terrible movie. They will admit that Zoe Saldana did a good job. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, Zoe Saldana is a good actress, and she did what she needed to do with what she was handed. First of all, she still didn't do anywhere near, in my opinion, as good a job as freaking Wicked, Ariana Grande,
right?
Who had no business being that good at acting.
Yeah.
I get she's a great singer. She was so good in that part. Anyways,
Yeah.
But second, like, I guess I want my best actor and best actress to be in something that's relatable or enjoyable in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Best writing, original screenplay, Sean Baker and Nora up against The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance. I suppose some people would argue that The Substance could have won this. And you could argue that Nora, as a screenplay, you wouldn't say after watching Nora, man, the writing of that movie. You would say the directing and the movie.
Acting,
But you wouldn't say the screenplay. So now I wasn't a huge fan. I mean, I liked The Brutalist. I think I gave it a 7 or something. But
which one won?
What?
Which one?
Nora won. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, best writing adapted screenplay, Conclave won, which I have to say I'm a bit confused by.
Did you not like the Conclave?
I did. I think I gave it a 7.
I liked it.
But if I saw that movie not knowing it was nominated for anything, it was nominated for Best Picture, and if you would have asked me, I think that the movie should be nominated for any Oscar, I would say, other than Ray Fiennes, maybe, I would say no. It's a fine movie, but it's not mind-blowing, and it's kind of like a period piece in a way, even though it's not. It's like contemporary, but it's people in costumes walking around talking, and it's to me fine, 7 out of 10. But I don't think it's Oscar worthy, particularly of the writing. I would say that A Complete Unknown, at least it would be hard to write that screenplay. I mean, Conclave, would it be that hard to adapt a book into that movie? I just don't see it. But what it's up against is kind of interesting. It's up against Amelia Perez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing. And I haven't seen Nickel Boys, but I heard it's really good. So I would assume that if I saw Nickel Boys, I would have said that should have won.
I saw half of Nickel Boys, and I could see where it was going to be.
What's up with all these half movies that you've been watching?
Well, it gets late at night and stuff. But Nickel Boys specifically, they did this thing where they were filming it all in first person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it's filmed from the first person perspective of the two characters.
Oh.
And on the one hand, that's a neat idea. And they never deviate. Like it's always
like Cloverfield.
Yeah, except
it's just from their perspective. They're not filming it.
Yeah.
It's not like found footage.
But this, and I didn't notice that that's what they were doing for the first 10, 15 minutes. And I kept feeling disoriented. I'm like, wait, who is this again? Where are we? And I think what's odd about it is even though the first person, you would think it would make you more immersed in it, it actually kept taking me out of the movie because it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel, because you're not used to. It's kind of probably the same thing with the frame rate. Like if you see something at the wrong frame rate, like you see something at 60 frames per second, you're like, that feels
Were you constantly
wrong.
aware of, oh, I'm inside a cameraman's shoes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's right. It doesn't even look like what you see with your eyes.
Yeah.
It's that the camera is trying to pretend it's someone.
Right.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a break. We get back. More emails about movies. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. So I'm really happy, Berto, that we're getting through because, there's been so many emails over the past number of months that I've been waiting to talk with you about, including all these movie emails. So I feel like we're really crossing some things off the list. Middle tier patron Caitlin, she says, "Hello, Dr. Kirk and Berto. My partner and I just watched Joker 2, Folie à Deux, and we both found it to be extremely profound and deep. Oh. We are wondering, why did this movie get such bad reviews? Have you guys seen it, and what did you think? There's a lot of material in this film. Thanks, and you both are awesome. Well, military patron Caitlin, you might hate us after talking. Did you see it, Bruno?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw it. Is there a reason why you didn't see it?
Yeah, I heard it was a bad musical.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say is that it is true that the movie, if I heard Todd Phillips is the writer-director, right? If I heard him describe what he was planning on doing, I would have said, wow, that is unexpected. Just like Joker 1 was unexpected. That is interesting. That's an interesting story. And I would be really, and given Joker 1
Sure.
and other movies that anyway, given Joker 1, I would have been really interested in seeing that, and I would have figured that it was going to, at the very least, be pretty good.
Oh, I gotta say that part of the reason I didn't see it is because I loved Joker 1 so much, and it was not a movie that I felt should have had a sequel.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
In fact, I thought it's almost impossible. It's one of those superhero kinds of problems in that the best movies in a superhero story are the origin story. Iron Man 1, Captain America 1, Ant-Man 1,
Right.
And it's really hard to write an interesting story after they have their powers.
Because do you know that Chuck Palahniuk wrote a graphic novel, Fight Club 2? He really did.
Oh, he did.
He did, and it's not good. It's bad.
Oh no!
Why would you do that?
Right. So it's just really hard to do that, And so where do you go with the character? And you could argue that he really was taking it to another level and was having kind of a conversation with the audience. Again, if I had heard the story beats, I would have said wow, that sounds amazing. So if the form works on you, which is it's a musical, it's a straight up musical.
With good songs?
Well, it depends on, they're not terrible.
Okay. So I haven't really heard any of, the songs didn't seem to get out there because I didn't.
Well, it's Joaquin and Lady Gaga singing songs, either solo or together. And of course, Lady Gaga is amazing as a singer, performer, actor. But Joaquin can manage. And, the Joker is singing songs, so it's not supposed to be beautiful. But so what I'll say is that if that form, which is very specific, you could argue that the movie invented a new integrated form of musical / I don't know what you call it, gritty or I don't know, because there's also kind of surreal moments where it's like a cartoon. And
is the premise that they're in the asylum, so they're imagining all this stuff? Or?
I mean, do you want me to tell you the plot?
No, it's fine. I'll watch it. It's okay.
It primarily takes place in that zone.
Sure.
But the so it's a straight up musical. It's not a Joker 2 with a couple songs.
Okay, it is a musical.
Yeah, it probably has more musical numbers than Wicked does. It's got a lot of performances, and if that sort of stuff works on you, and that form and that art form works on it, it's a powerful movie. And when it ends, it's a powerful sequence that happens towards the end. There's a number of things that happen in the very last bit, and it does kind of resonate with the first movie, and it even resonates with the way audience received the movie. Because Joker 1. For people like you and me, watched it and enjoyed it for one reason, but there was another group of people that watched it and actually venerated him as some sort of incel
god
hero. And so the movie is trying to essentially degrade or humiliate or I don't know, indict those people.
Okay.
and it it definitely does that. But what it did for me is it sort of takes down what I enjoyed about the movie in the process. You know what I mean? Anyway.
And I guess now I got to watch it.
I mean, it's definitely an interesting watch.
Yeah.
But if the form doesn't work on you, like it didn't really work on me, you might find that you tell me later on that you saw the first half because you fell asleep. Because it's not. There's not a lot of plot points that really happen. It's a bit of drudgery, and I think that's on purpose. I think
I'm curious. I'm at least curious now. I'm more curious now. They should have had you on the marketing team, because before I was like not excited. Now I'm excited.
Okay. So another email, long-term patron, annual patron, Natasha from California. We met her.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? She says, "Hi, Kirk and Humberto. For a long time, I've been a big fan of the Alien movie franchise, but I've never heard you mention the franchise. With Romulus having come out, I was wondering if you had plans or you did see it and what you thought about the movie. I thought it could be interesting for you and Humberto to rank the Aliens films if you're both somewhat into the series. My ranking would be Alien, number 1. 2 would be Aliens 2. 3 would be Prometheus. 4 would be Romulus. She says it's a solid 7. So, her 4 isn't like a sharp drop-off, right? So that means she thinks like Prometheus is like a 7 or an 8. 5 would be Covenant. And then 6 would be Alien 3, going back to, the original. She says it's David Fincher. I thought that Alien 3 was, what's his face? Okay, I have it all here on IMDb. Oh, it was, no, yeah, Fincher. Wait, what'd she say?
Fincher.
Oh, I thought she said, I read David Fincher, but I, in my head, heard David Lynch.
Oh, got it, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I thought that was David. She says it's David Fincher, but I thought it was David Fincher.
Oh, I guess you're right.
Yeah, and then number 7, Alien Resurrection. She says it's actually a god-awful movie. And then, of course, she says that Alien versus Predator movies are terrible and not canon. So, Humberto.
My rankings.
Yeah.
Okay. My top, I'll start from the top. My top one is Alien. It is not only a fantastic alien movie, it's an amazing sci-fi movie. Most people don't realize that's like 1978 or something.
I know, 79.
It's insane. Like that.
Totally insane.
That holds up.
Yeah,
it holds up.
It looks like a movie that could easily have been made recently, and people would think that's amazing special effects.
And that they're doing like retro computer screens. That's the only. But oh my gosh, and the acting, the whole thing, and it's one of the best horror movies of all time.
Yeah, so that's why for me, Alien is number 2, because it's you could argue it's half horror, and I'm not really into horror.
Which I love.
But it is I give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
So, but I love Aliens. That's my number 1.
So my number 1 is Alien. And since that's the only movie in the franchise, that's both my number 1 and my only movie. There's another movie that's similar, kind of maybe they borrowed spiritually from it. It was by the guy who did Titanic. It was in the 80s. It's a great movie with this. They say like they've got all these little catchphrases, and they have all these aliens running around on a base. It's a very fun movie. It's not really
game over, man.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that one is the closest I'd say that's maybe related. I wish maybe it would have been interesting if they were related somehow.
Okay, Heidecker.
Anyways, my point is I really only like the first Alien. The second Aliens is amazing. I just don't put them together because they're very different kind of movies. Every other movie after that, I've had some severe problems with.
Why?
I will admit, Alien 3 is an abomination. It has like the alien queen. It's got all these, like, it's the prison movie.
Yeah, so let me talk about Alien 3. When I saw it in 1992 and subsequently would rewatch it, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years later, I remember rewatching it on VHS. I was okay with it. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I think it's fine. It's very different. As you know, Alien is very different from Aliens, which is very different. I think that the expectations around Alien 3 were so high and so specific that it's really hard to make Alien 3 satisfying to people. But for me, watching it, when I saw it when I was 21 years old in a theater, I actually, it might have been one of the first Fincher movies I'd ever seen. So maybe that was part of it that worked on it. But I also liked how grim it was. It's a very grim movie.
I'm not sure I saw it in the theater, which could have hurt my appreciation. And for the record, it's nowhere near as horrible as Alien 4. Alien 4 was really bad.
Which one's Alien 4?
Winona Ryder's in it.
Is that Alien Resurrection?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I never saw that.
Oh my God, it's so bad. It's comically bad. Like, it's just someone sat there and wrote like the worst scenes you could write. It was so bad.
So for me,
but just to wrap up. But the one movie of the new series that I found intellectually interesting was Prometheus.
okay.
Yeah, it's got a lot of problems, but I found it intellectually.
Yeah, I gave Prometheus a 5. I think I originally would have given it a 6 or a 7 when I saw it in the theater. Upon rewatching it, especially when I start to think about what the movie is saying.
Yeah, it loses.
And I'm like, wait, so what?
Yeah.
None of this makes sense. When I saw it the first time, it was the first Alien movie after how long, and Ridley Scott is back in the director's chair, and so it was. I just sort of figured something is happening that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
it was a brainy, cool concept movie at first.
Yeah, and the look of it was amazing.
Yeah.
But upon rethinking about what's happening, it's just a lot of this, sort of writing that happens now that J.J. Abrams invented of like the mystery box, right? Where it's like you create a question mark and you have no answer for it. And you just hope that people don't remember that there was a mystery. Like when they have that giant head and they're in the ship and they're like poking it and the thing starts to move and you're like, what? And I don't know, like I've watched hours and hours of YouTube documentaries and content providers that are explaining the whole story, and it makes it a little better for me.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to do that, and it still doesn't really wrap it up for me. No. And there was a way to make Prometheus less mystery boxy. J.J. Abrams, you could have just in fact, some of the cut scenes actually were helpful to the story.
And I've seen those, and I agree. And honestly, like I'm glad you mentioned Lost, because halfway through that movie, the reason I was so into it, I'm like, this is cool. They're setting up like this backstory that actually humans were seeded by these people and like what's going on. But then they put all these hints of stuff to come, and then that stuff never pays off.
And of course, the depiction of the workers, the guys, are so stupid and so immature. I mean, even if we're supposed to believe, because to me, it's like so often you have, like, George Lucas fell into this too, that Ridley Scott is really like this now, because you have him making Gladiator 2,
right?
Which
I didn't see it, but I heard
Gladiator 2 would be a good Netflix watch. When you're bored, it's fine. It's not horrific, and certainly Denzel is great in it. But as a story, I would have been like, oh, someone's trying to riff on Gladiator, but it's Ridley Scott making a sequel, and it's like, show me that you don't even understand your own movie. So when he's making Prometheus, because the original Alien was, there was a movement in the 70s to make things gritty and real.
Right.
Movies, there's all sorts of movies. I mean, you could argue The Godfather was even kind of in this category, where it doesn't have the glitz and glamour. It looks like it could even be kind of like a documentary.
Yeah.
And so there's all these scenes in Alien where they're sitting around the table and they're just kind of jibber jabbering, and they're talking over each other.
It feels authentic.
And they feel like real characters, but they weren't unprofessional. No. You got the sense that this isn't a world where it's not Star Trek, This is a world where a lot of people are spacefaring.
Yeah.
And these people are, they're kind of blue collar workers in space. And you have a captain who's not that. He's sort of the foreman or something. But everyone's just kind of like working class. But they're not unprofessional. They know what they're doing. Right. They're not falling over themselves. And so Ridley Scott remembers being praised for that or something. And so he makes Prometheus, because this is like a riff on Alien, where you have this ship that goes out, prequel to Alien. And he's like, yeah, remember how I got all that praise for having the people be unprofessional? Well, then he writes these characters, or oversees the writing of these characters, they're stupid.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't understand what he even wrote originally and did this like fan fiction version of himself.
I know. And
Gladiator 2 is the same problem. Let me just tell you one example, because this is fucking, because Gladiator is a great movie. And I wanted to like Gladiator 2. There's this moment, spoiler alert, I don't care about spoiling this. The whole movie is about Maximus's son. Okay. And he's a man now, and he's a gladiator. He gets himself into the arena. And there's this moment at the sort of climax of the movie where he bends down and picks up dirt and rubs it around in his hand. Do you remember Russell Crowe?
Because he watched Gladiator 1.
He never met his father.
No, but he watched the movie. And he knows that that's an iconic scene.
Ridley Scott wrote and directed, or at least oversaw the writing of Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2. How do you write fan fiction that doesn't understand the assignment of the original story? Like, what are you doing?
Did he build his own droid?
Exactly. It's like you didn't even it's not an outsider that doesn't get it. You're the one who made it, and then you think, were you stupid back then too? And you just, a broken clock is right twice a day.
That is really weird. I agree with you that phenomena, when that happens, is puzzling, because you recognize this genius that was there at first. It's like, imagine if Quentin does a sequel to one of his movies and everything we liked about it he misinterprets, and then not on purpose, because
or you age, like Coppola, and you just lose your talent or something. And the other thing is it's not like it's this spontaneous line that said, the way that these, especially a movie like Gladiator 2, the amount of time that goes into writing and doing the storyboard and production, and there's whole meetings just with clipboards planning on how you're going to shoot that scene where he reaches down onto the ground.
So a lot of people would have.
There's literally probably hundreds of people involved that months earlier are reviewing this particular scene, talking about how it's going to be shot, lit, what's the dirt going to look like, it's on the storyboard. At no point does anyone say, Ridley, this doesn't make sense, and no one's going to like it, and you don't need it. It's not necessary. But the problem is, Berto, is that 90% of the audience is like, ooh, Memberberry, I remember that. I mean, that's what I heard.
Oh, that's the thing that his dad did.
Because, episode 9, Star Wars, is wall-to-wall fucking Memberberries. And God bless, I'm not even going to mention, but there are people that I love and adore that are not Star Wars fans because they don't give a shit.
Sure.
And they loved episode 9 because they're like, oh, I remember that bit. And, are you not entertained?
Yes, literally.
and so that's all it's for. And
that's
people
sad.
went to a movie, they liked it, and they went home and they never thought about it again. And us fans that overthink this shit are like crying ourselves into in oblivion. So anyway, Prometheus.
No. So there's definitely a pattern to him, because the second Prometheus was even worse in that direction. If you will recall, do you remember
Alien Covenant?
Yeah, is that the second one? Yeah. Do you remember how it starts? The scientists land on this strange planet. Again, evoking the thing. Like, at this point, they're not even wearing their helmets. Like, the protocols are all out the door. These aren't even technicians, because you can maybe like the technician. These are scientists. They land on a strange atmosphere. They're not even wearing their helmets.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so now we're just like, okay, throw all the rules out the door.
And it's so stupid because they didn't have to take off their helmets.
Right.
They could have kept their helmets on.
Yes.
And when you think about Alien 1, when you have this footage, because when they come upon the crash site, there's that ship, that sort of circular ship thing, and there's this grainy footage of someone in a spacesuit walking out there, and it's beautiful, right? It's shot with probably video camera in 1978, because it's released 79, and you don't have to have anything more than that. There's a mystery, and so you didn't have to have the helmets off. There's so many things.
I mean, and they still took some shortcuts because they had the lights inside, which wouldn't make sense in reality.
No.
But they had helmets, and you could see their faces and stuff. Here, they're like, you know what? They don't even need the helmets.
Well, and so I've been over this, and I'm remembering all the complaints. All you have to do, instead, because what happened was someone's like, I think the atmosphere is fine. I think he looks down at some reading or something, and he's like, "I'm going to take my helmet off," and everyone else is like, "No, no, no," because the context is it's not sure that the air is breathable. All you have to do is say, there's like a gap in time, and a scientist comes out from some room in the ship and says, "By the way, I did a total
full analysis.
We can breathe." And then you can take your fucking helmet off.
A line of dialogue.
Yeah.
Because, but it's funny because we have problems here when one person goes from one continent to the other and brings chickenpox, right? Like we're talking about planets.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but yeah, I think that it's this syndrome of the auteurs, maybe because they get older or whatever, they don't even understand their own thing, and then they add a whole bunch of ridiculous
or too many yes men. I mean,
definitely that.
Napoleon.
For sure.
Napoleon was a terrible movie, mostly because I understand history.
I didn't see that one.
And plus, like Joaquin plays like he's the wrong person to play that character, and he was directed horribly. Like, there's a way that you could have made that movie, even with Joaquin, I imagine, that would have been way better. You even could have kept the script the same. The scenes are just so cringy. I'm just watching like it just seems like they're joking around on stage. It seems like Joaquin is literally joking around on stage.
Is it not as accurate as Bill and Ted's?
Yeah. With Napoleon, he likes
Ziggy
ice cream,
Piggy, Ziggy Piggy.
Ziggy Piggy, Ziggy. That's right. Yeah. Another trope, by the way, of Napoleon, that he was fat, Anyway. Number 5 for me. So number 4 is Prometheus. Number 5 is Alien Covenant. I give Alien Covenant a 4. Actually, there were parts of it that I thought were fine. But a 4 to me is like, I wish I hadn't seen it.
I did not enjoy it.
Yeah. And I don't think I've seen any of the other ones.
I did not see the Romulus one, the latest one.
Right. So I heard good, not amazing reviews of Romulus, but people that are like us, that are like, I don't know about these new movies, Covenant and Prometheus and that sort of thing. But Romulus is like a return to the old Alien, and so I was thinking, well, maybe I'll see it, but I don't know. I feel like I've done that so many times, and then I don't like it. There'll be people that are like, oh, it's kind of like a return to the old thing. They listen to the fans or something, and then I get burned. And plus, like as I've been saying, I love Alien, but if I see a facsimile of Alien, number 1, I'm not really interested in that genre. You know what I mean? If I saw a facsimile of Alien 2 or Aliens, then I probably would see it.
But see, the problem, look, I loved Alien, especially as a kid. But already the first problem I had with it was that I was like, okay, so Ripley survived this once in a lifetime thing. You're telling me she's going to survive again with even more aliens? Like, come on now. So I already had that problem. Even as a kid, I was like, one alien. Well,
the premise what made sense. They needed her as...
I know, I get it. And that's why I forget. And look, I love Aliens. It's a fun movie. But already at that point, I was already like, come on now. Believability. And you know that this happens in a lot of movies like that where...
Things get bigger and bigger.
And the thing that was so threatening at first, now you have like 100 of them.
Yeah.
Like this one alien was the biggest threat in the universe. Now you have, I'm killing aliens. Okay.
But I feel like they did that well.
But then, and I loved it. But then you get to Alien 3.
Yeah.
And Ripley again. And again. I'm like, come on,
yeah, just
dude.
have a different character, Yeah. Let's take a break. And when we get back, let's read one more email about movies. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, back from the break. One more email. Patron Luke from England. He says, I was introduced to psychology in Seattle by my girlfriend. Both of us are psychology students. We started off watching some of your YouTube content together and chatting about our thoughts as we went, and it was incredibly bonding for us.
Oh.
I have more recently been exploring the deep dives on attachment, narcissism, and various episodes on the Patreon, exclusive episodes, and can't believe the value for the money. Wow. So thanks for that. What do you and Humberto think of my favorite psychological documentary, Crumb, from 1994 by Terry Zwigoff? it is about an American cartoonist with a quite profound ability to draw the more shadowy parts of his psyche about sex, prejudice, Freudian fantasies, etc. So, Berto, did you see Crumb?
Yes, and that was such a crazy experience for me because as I was watching, I didn't know his name or who he was, and
Harry Crumb is his name.
And when I started watching it, I did recognize the art. I'm like, oh, I've seen this stuff, but I didn't know that it was. But as the movie was developing, I kept thinking, like, this isn't real, is it? Like,
or sorry, Robert Crumb.
Is it Robert? Yeah. I kept thinking this can't be real. This must be like a mockumentary or something, because he seemed like such a fabricated character, and the whole thing seemed so over the top, like the dysfunction and and
his brother
and the brother. Yeah, like everything seemed crazy to me, and yet fascinating. Like you can't stop watching. And then the art is undeniably artistic, but also you can see the like the pain and the all the trauma in it, and it was amazing. So I really enjoyed it. But it was also,
did you see it in the theater back then?
I don't know that I saw it in the theater.
You would have been in high school.
No, I was in college at that point.
Oh, okay.
And I definitely, no, I did not see it in the theater. I saw it with Mitch on VHS.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I saw it in the theater. Not that I'm not saying that to one up you.
No, but that would make it even weirder, because when I saw it, because if you see it in the theater, especially, you go unknown to a new movie, and it's like bigger than life in your face, and you don't know, you can't do an internet search or anything.
Yeah.
That's even weirder.
Well, if you saw it in '96, there was no internet either.
We had internet.
Well, you couldn't look up anything about the Crumb, the movie, in 1996.
But I didn't see it in '96.
I'm just saying,
yeah.
Anyway,
I saw it like in 2000 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was 23 when I saw it in the theater, and it was a big deal to me for a number of reasons that I'll talk about. And I rated it back then as an 8 out of 10, which is pretty high, especially for a documentary. So I really enjoyed it for a number of reasons. So if you don't know Robert Crumb, not Harry Crumb, he was most famous for art that was often like a bumper sticker or a shirt in the 70s that said "Keep on trucking."
Yeah.
And there would be these characters with really big legs and feet. Mm-hmm. But for those that knew Robert Crumb, and I think he was in San Francisco, and that's where he was doing his art and coming into the business, that his art, his cartoons were not for kids at a time when that was very avant-garde.
Yeah.
Normally cartoons was just only for kids. I feel like it's taken 30 years for the United States to realize that, with all the Gen Z people and millennials coming up with anime. But people in our generation and older, at least in the past, they'd be like, cartoons for adults? Like, that's what kind of sickness is that? And so he was doing this stuff in the 60s and 70s, and the documentary gets into his place in history and his importance in the culture, and also his importance with alternative comics and how he influenced so many other graphic novelists and this kind of stuff. He brought that mentality to the United States in a very he was mildly popular because of this of the comics that he had and the bumper stickers that he sold and stuff, and a lot of people were inspired by him and continued doing what he was doing anyway. But if you knew about his comic, his various different creations, there was a lot of sex and a lot of, as Luke is putting it, Freudian fantasies and stuff, because he was really into dominant women and women that had really big butts and really big thighs.
Didn't it in the movie? Didn't they explore that he was abused by his mother?
I don't remember, but that doesn't surprise me. I mean, his brother, who is not really central to the story of Robert Crumb's success, was a look into the family and a look into the history. And the brother was more outward about his suffering and his pain and his trauma. And that was also kind of a new thing, or at least it wasn't talked about. So what I'll tell you is that this movie was right down the middle, me and my people. We're talking Seattle, 1994. It's post grunge, but still kind of in that zone. We are struggling college kids. We're going to Value Village to buy our t-shirts and our pants, just like Kurt Cobain in Smells Like Teen. When I saw Smells Like Teen Spirit when it was first coming up, the video, I was like, oh my God, he's dressing like me and my friends. Not out of fashion, really. I mean, kind of out of fashion, because it's not like you bought anything at Value Village, is a secondhand store. It's not like you just bought anything at a secondhand store, but you bought stuff at a secondhand store that could pass as fashionable-ish, but also was a little ironic because it's like a cardigan. That's what like Mr. Rogers wears. Yeah. Look at me, I'm wearing a cardigan in 1992. Yeah. And so it was right up that alley. And this movie was not about that, but it had that ethic, that alternative ethic. The other element of this was that I had friends that were, very dedicated and very in the world of alternative comics, which is a whole world. And it was really booming in the alternative, like really alternative scene, but there was a definite community. And if people remember the comic book, I don't know what you call it, but the comic series I think it's called Hate, and it's kind of in the Crumb thing. But anyway, one of my friends, Donna, she was in that world and knew all those people and also made her own comic. Ooh. And she even let me make some of the art in her comic. Like I was like, oh, well, let me try a couple things. And I would draw it out. And she introduced me to that whole world. And it was
That's super cool.
The whole world was supposed to be alternative. It was supposed to be counterculture. It was supposed to be internal. It was supposed to be like, let me talk about my trauma. Let me talk about how I'm a loser. Let me talk about how no one likes me. Let me talk about how I probably drink too much and smoke too much, and how I don't have any money and my underwear stinks and I'm a loser. And the popular Chads, before that whole thing, they hate us. It was, in today's world, I think for a lot of people, they'd be like, oh, that sounds like something. In the early 90s, we're right on the hills of Vixen and Motley Crue and all that stuff. That was not okay. Revenge of the Nerds was a movie that had a premise because that was real life. Yeah. That if you were not one of the cool kids, you were a nerd and you were irrelevant and you could be bullied. And the early 90s, it was, that was still going strong, but for a certain group of people. And I think, Seattle, we kind of thought of ourselves as the nerd in the American playground, Sure. Portland and Seattle, before grunge and Microsoft and Amazon and all this stuff, we were the dorks. We were the forgotten. No one cared about us. Nothing good came out of Seattle. There's nothing to be proud of. People didn't even know we existed, really.
Sleepy lumber mill.
Right. Or they thought we were literally in Canada or in Alaska or something. Yeah. And it was, this movie was a big part of that. And I went with my friends who were into the zines and the comics and all that stuff. And just to see it through their eyes, because, Robert Crumb was their hero. I mean, because if I just saw the documentary, I would have been like, whoa, that's, kind of like you. It's like, well, that's a really interesting dude. I didn't know about that Keep On Trucking and that brother. And whoa, he's an interesting, because Robert Crumb has a particular way of dressing, and he's kind of a pervert. That's kind of weird. And he talks about, but to see it through all of my alternative comics people, and Seattle was kind of a bit of a mecca for that anyway. And to see it through their eyes, I was just like, wow, this is like a thing. To see the movie was almost like a religious experience for them, And Donna actually passed away a few years ago. So thinking about all that kind of brings that back up.
It's interesting because on the one hand, I had this like aversion, or maybe aversion is too strong. I had bad feelings towards a lot of the grunge scene. it started from a couple angles. One of them is when I was in high school. I've never liked scenes to begin with, and like as soon as like that thing started becoming a scene, I was like, this seems annoying. Part of it is how folks dressed. It seemed like that seems so unkempt. Like, do they not care? Did they not? I was annoyed about it. It also seemed dirty. Like it's like they even showered today. Like that seems annoying to me. And I remember watching the Jane's Addiction video for Being Caught Stealing, and it rubbed me the wrong way in so many ways. First of all, certainly I had some homophobic feelings or transphobic even, whatever, because he's dressed in a particular way. And then, but there's more than that.
And you know that Jane's Addiction isn't grunge, right?
To me, it was, though.
Okay.
To me, that whole thing with like, they would have played the same shows, right? They would have gone to freaking Lollapalooza and all this kind of BS. And for me, the same people that liked those new bands coming out that were grunge liked Jane's Addiction. So I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, typical.
But I like the music, but I see this video and they're like stealing and everyone's glorifying that, oh, they're stealing, being caught stealing. I'm like, why are you glorifying this? The whole thing rubbed me the wrong way. So then, fast forward, it's now the year 2000, and we rent this video and it's Crumb, and I'm like, I've never heard of this, and I start watching it. And first of all, I get that aversion feeling again, like this feels like dirty, like this guy doesn't wash, he's weird, he's a perv, and it's this grunge thing again. Like I'm getting those feelings.
Did you ever, post UW, University of Washington, did you ever like rent a shitty apartment or a shitty house with friends?
Just in the U district, yeah.
You did?
Yeah, but I didn't like that it was shitty. I wanted it to be.
How long of a period of time was that for you? I mean, you were with your wife
3
early,
years.
right? So
yeah, 3 years worth of renting.
So were you living with her yet?
Not yet. Oh, no, by the time I saw this movie?
No, I'm just asking because to me, the vibe that you're kind of, the part of what you're talking about, or at least I'll just say for myself, in 1993, everything that you're describing, how it just kind of feels dirty and unkempt, that was not by choice. That was a function of like, you have no money and there's like 6 of you living in a house, in some unpleasant neighborhood in Seattle, and you're telling your landlord that only 4 of you live there.
Right.
And whenever the landlord comes over, you have these like code words that, so you run around and you pick up all the mattresses that were just sort of placed in the basement and you're shoving them into the closet because you don't want to get caught because you're breaking the lease. Right. And if you get kicked out, you literally don't know if anyone would ever rent to you. And all of us are so poor and our clothes suck and we are kind of dirty because it fucking rains all the time. Right. And we don't necessarily have a good car and we're trying to get to the bus and, it was all that thing.
So all of that makes so much sense. For me...
But you never had that life?
Well, a little bit, but what's happening is, even if I literally was in the same apartment, which is just dirty, I would have still felt the same way because, well, a couple things. There was a lot of associations I was making. One of them was the drug part. I knew that a lot of this grunge scene, they were doing like heroin and other things. I'm like, oh, that's stupid. Okay, so there was that. The second one was the feeling of unbridled chaos, and think about it. I had moved from unbridled chaos to a nice, stable society. Yeah. And this was challenging that notion. This was like, they broke the guitar. Someone just crashed, the glass broke and someone's like, you just broke it. No, that's not funny, dude. Beavis and Butthead is a joke. It's not supposed to be like this. It really, you can see it. Like I viscerally reacted negatively to it. And when I went to UW, I remember, and the other thing is I had a negative association that the hipsters would find me unhip, and that pissed me off.
You don't mean hipsters, you mean the hip grunge people.
I would call them hipsters, even though it's not the right, whatever.
Okay.
Because in fact, like Shun had this friend.
So the sort of, they're not like authentically grunge, they're just fashionably grunge. Because they're
probably authentic. I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference.
Well, so what years were you at UW?
93 is when I started.
So by that point, grunge was so
But remember, I'm using the grunge label even incorrectly, right? Like Smashing Pumpkins, I called grunge.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so early 90s sort of.
Yeah. So, but so like I go to UW, my friend Shun has this friend Mason, and the two are playing music. He introduces, and I'm immediately like, I'm just disappointing this dude from moment one, because he seems like he listens to just the right kind of bands, and I'm sitting here singing Billy Joel and Bye Bye Miss American Pie, and I'm just not the right, and it pisses me off, damn it. Why do they have to be so freaking about like, anyways.
Well, no. So I was a little bit, I had like a couple toes in your camp.
Yeah.
But I was completely in it to win it. I wasn't really into the Pearl Jam side of things, but I was really into Mudhoney and later Soundgarden albums, and of course the Pumpkins. So there was that. But I can imagine knowing you and also knowing how you've described yourself from back then. You're much more, I don't know what you could call it, top 40-ish, or just more pleasant music, more kind of standard. You're the Paul McCartney to my John Lennon kind of thing. And so I can see you in the midst of, because at the time it was universal. Like today, if you were, I'm guessing, if you're a college kid and you are a musician and you want to join a band or something, I'm guessing that there's this is my impression, is that there's probably a variety. There's probably some trends that I don't know about, but there's not just this dominant force.
Sure.
There was a time in the early 90s, especially when Nirvana was like everywhere, in terms of radio, that if you weren't doing something akin to that in that direction, then you were just like so dumb and irrelevant and of the past and cheesy.
Right.
If you were playing folk music, or if you were trying to play something top 40 or pleasant, if you weren't hitting your guitars hard and your drums hard and your songs weren't like really you don't necessarily have to scream, but the songs have to be really depressing and angry.
Right.
Like if you were doing anything other than that, then you were a cheesy ass, MF or get the fuck out. And it was, every band had to be that way. And it actually kind of fucked me up, because that's not my strength. And so at the time, that's when I was, fairly proliferate, I was prolific writing, and, we were signed and going to the studio, and I, was, writing with my band and stuff. And I was really trying to force myself to be in that world. And when I listened back to a lot of the songs that I was trying to write at the time, and I just cringe at like, dude, it's just not you. It's not your strengths. If you just would have wrote it the way it felt to you, it would have turned out better. But the force was so I could see how
and I'm coming
would be
from
really
like,
annoying. Yeah,
I'm coming like, if someone got into my car, the music I would be listening to is like Erasure, the Chess musical,
which still was being listened to.
Led Zeppelin 4, though.
4 would be fine, but Erasure, Depeche Mode, like I would listen to that too.
Now,
but it certainly wasn't like what would get you a lot of cool points.
Right. Now, I will say though, I have to be clear. Most of the music I actually liked. I loved Nirvana. I loved Alice in Chains. It's Stone Temple Pilots. Oh, not sorry. I did like them. But,
Mother Love Bone.
But Mother Love Bone. I loved Soundgarden a lot. I love Soundgarden. But so it wasn't about the music. It was actually the least. The music was the least of it. It was all this other stuff. But the reason I bring that up is because when I started watching Crumb, and this is all the way 2000, so years later, I'm watching Crumb, and I'm getting all the trauma is coming back. And he's like dirty, and he doesn't wash, and he's a pervert. And when a glass breaks on the floor, no one cleans it because it's funny. And so, and then on top of that, I keep thinking to myself, this can't be real. This character is too like weird, like too surreal. But by the time I was done with that documentary, first of all, I had gained a lot of empathy for not only him, his situation, but also that ethos. So what's weird is that by watching Crumb, I think I healed a little bit. Like I was able to connect with like, okay, maybe this is okay. Like maybe, in fact,
was it an unsafety thing that you felt?
Yes. Definitely. Huh. And what I finally, and this I only realized just this second, which is interesting. This had to be part of it. In the house where I grew up in, before I moved here, there were 3 things happening around me. in my face.
The house was caving in, or
The house was literally falling apart.
Yeah.
And there was no fixing it because A, there was no money and no one to do it. So the house was falling apart.
And your grandfather was suffering from dementia.
Grandpa it wasn't dementia. It was more akin to Parkinson's, which means he was getting boxed into his brain and his body was getting worse and worse. And I'm seeing it happen. And it's grotesque. And they're rushing him to the bathroom, and he has an accident, and I'm seeing my grandpa in this state, and it's grotesque. It doesn't look good. And he's older, and he looks sick, and it's all around me.
Yeah, and to be clear, you are being raised by your grandparents.
Yeah, and my dad's there too, but it's like, and then the third part is my dad. My dad would have fit right at home in that kind of environment. It's not that he was fastidiously clean. He was actually a germaphobe and stuff. So it's not that part, but it's like he didn't have a job and he lives there in his room and he smokes all the time. And so I actually think, and then I moved to this nice, clean new environment, a stable, organized mom. And like, it's okay if she doesn't hug me all the time. At least I have stability, and the US is clean and they have rules. And okay, great. And then this movement threatens me to pull me back into disarray.
Interesting.
I never put that together. But then when I watch Crumb, I do remember like kind of connecting with it in a way and being like, okay, maybe this is okay. It's weird.
So the movie is about, as Luke is saying, childhood trauma and the psyche and about sexual development and how Robert Crumb might have developed his pervert status. And he even kind of, I don't know if he did this on purpose or if it's based on him, but if you just saw a picture of him or heard him talking, he looks like the stereotypical pervert himself.
Yeah. That's why
greasy hair.
That's why I thought it wasn't real at first.
Yeah, and an old tan polyester suit,
You're gonna draw it. That's what you would draw.
Yeah. So it is interesting that in a weird way, this documentary about a traumatized family, the Robert and his brother, it de-traumatized you.
Yeah, by making it, we always talk about empathy, but and I'm not saying I thought all of this at the time. I'm kind of connecting it now, but feeling empathy for my grandfather's condition, for example, right? Because of course I'm a kid and I don't want to see grotesque, sick things like of illness, but that is life and that's not his fault. He's the one going through that pain.
But you know, regardless of how old you are, that's going to be tough. But particularly if you're 13 and you don't have much power. And also, like, when you're 13, we want 13-year-olds to just be 13. And that means that they don't have to deal with these kinds of things, you know?
By living
not that they can't, and not that it can't go well, but you weren't being nurtured and enriched and safe and then experiencing grandpa on the side. This was like in your face.
Day in and day out.
And that's another element of your trauma that I don't think you've ever talked about before.
Yeah,
I mean, you've talked about the chaos, but not really in this way.
I had never considered it, but it makes sense. And it's funny because as I was describing to you, and I was really feeling the visceral reaction to what I was describing about grunge and stuff, but I had never really had a theory of why.
Yeah. Well, you would have said you just didn't like movements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Berto,
you learn something new.
You keep surprising me. You contain multitudes. You keep me on my toes. There's traumas around every corner.
What if you find out someday that I've been making all of it up? It's one of those Kaiser Soze moments. I read little things. I didn't grow up in Colombia. My parents are still together for 70 years, whatever.
Oh, man.
Except you know too much of me because you've visited. Although they could have been paid actors.
Yeah. Well, if that happens, what would I do? I would just choose to believe that it was all true. And that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Please take care of yourself. All of this was true. And again, take care of yourself because
you deserve it.